Alright, so I made a video a while back about how I'm part of the problem when it comes to Hollywood rebooting or remaking all of these old IPs. And the point of the video was basically to show how I'm a hypocrite. Basically, I came to the conclusion that if I care enough about the IP, I'll watch the remake. Even though I know that most of the time they're not remaking it to expand on the story or the world or the characters. They're usually just remaking them because they know they'll make money. It's a safe bet. Now, obviously there are a ton of exceptions to this trend, but I think it's fair to say that most remakes are just fine, if not downright bad. So even though I know that these studios and executives' intentions aren't always pure when retelling these stories, the truth is that if I care enough about the IP, I'm gonna go see it. Hence, I'm part of the problem. And so the reason I'm making this video is because a couple of weeks ago I was talking to my sister, and she asked me, well, if I'm part of the problem, then what do I think the solution is? And I think I touched on it a little bit in that video, but I didn't really expand on it. Again, the point of that video was just to show how I'm a hypocrite, because I thought I was upholding this principle of not going to see these remakes because of everything I just talked about with studios not really retelling these stories with the purest of intentions. But the reality is just that it was easier for me to not go and see some of those remakes because I didn't really care about those stories as much as other people did. And when they do remake a story that I care about, I'll blow right past my principle and go watch the remake. But the solution is kind of tied up in that, right? If they're remaking these stories just for the money, then the solution would be to not give them money whenever they remake these stories. And therefore, the best thing to do would be to abstain from watching these remakes and these reboots. If at the end of the day, these studios and executives only care about the money, then the only thing that can affect their behavior is a change to their bottom lines. They don't care about a negative Rotten Tomatoes or IMDb review. Why are they going to care about The Lion King getting a 52% rating on Rotten Tomatoes and a just ridiculously inflated and bloated audience score, considering the fact that if you actually go down to the actual reviews, very few of the audience scores actually give it anything more than 3 stars. But anyway, why are they going to care about any of those reviews when The Lion King brought in $1.6 billion in box office sales? Why would the studios and executives care that The Last Jedi might be the most divisive movie ever made when it did $1.3 billion in ticket sales? What incentive do they have to stop making these movies when they continue to make these executives wealthier and wealthier? To hammer this point home, I want to use an example from a YouTuber that I watch called The Critical Drinker. Basically, he does movie reviews, and he has this production nightmare series where he basically just talks about what was happening behind the scenes in these studios that led to some of these large-scale movies just flopping and being terrible. Again, not financially. And so he recently did one for the Justice League. Now, if you want the full details, you should go and watch that whole video because it's very well done, and it goes into all the different aspects that led to this movie being as bad as it was. But there was one aspect of this production nightmare that was extremely telling about the studio's mindsets when making these movies. Without going too much into detail, at one point the original director for the Justice League movie, Zack Snyder, had to step away for personal reasons. But by that point, he had pretty much already finished up one version of the movie. But the executives weren't really happy with it. And so they brought in a new director and basically told him to change everything about the old cut, shave off a good 90 minutes of that movie, and put it out by the end of the year. Now, if they had just told him to do all of that and change basically the entire movie, yes, that's difficult, but that's doable. And it's been done before. But to do all of that in this ridiculously short amount of time was basically an impossible task. And so the question becomes, well, why would they need it done in this amount of time specifically?
Changes were afoot at Warner Brothers, who were in the process of being bought over by AT&T. Naturally, this had the Warner executives kinda worried because for all they knew, their new corporate overlords might decide to fire them all or dissolve the studio altogether. They needed to milk as much money from the corporate cash cow as possible before it all dried up, and a lot of that depended on their annual bonuses, which would only get paid out if Justice League released at the end of the year. So, November it had to be.
And so they rushed everything to make sure that the movie came out when it did, because the only way they would be entitled to their holiday bonuses is if the movie came out at a specific time, even though by no metric was this movie ready to come out. And I think the reviews reflect that. But at the end of the day, they knew that this IP was going to make money, and they were right. The movie did $660 million in the box office. So even though they spent $300 million producing it, this objectively bad movie made its money back and then some. And again, this just shows where the studio's priorities are. It's the Justice League, one of the most popular IPs of all time, featuring the most iconic heroes of all time. And so they know how much fans care about these characters, about these stories. But at the end of the day, that's not where their incentive lies. Their incentive lies in making money off of this story, not the story itself. So this might be a good time to mention that my dissatisfaction with these remakes is largely directed at the studios and the executives, not with the directors, the actors, the production teams, or anyone else involved in the process. All of those players only come into the picture after the studio has already greenlit the project. I mean, I can't even really be mad at the writers of these remakes, because who knows how many rewrites and tune-ups their scripts had to go through before the studio decided to greenlit their project. Those writers might have had some really transformative ideas and visions about the characters and stories and worlds that they were remaking that the studios ended up killing just to make everything more consumable. And so I just think it's important to draw the distinction between the artists and the business people involved in this process. And then to take it a step further and acknowledge that the unfortunate reality is that these business people are just doing their jobs. And that's why I'm dissatisfied and not angry, because the studios have to make sure these projects are profitable. Otherwise, they can't fund any of these projects or any of the other original projects that I enjoy. And so going all the way back to the solution, I think the only way we stop getting these bad to mediocre remakes is if we make them less profitable. And the only way we can achieve that is if we stop giving our time, money, and attention to them. Now, I say that, but don't forget, I'm a hypocrite. I've read all these articles and watched all these videos about how there's just no more originality left in Hollywood and how everything is a remake now. And I've done my best to contribute to this solution. I mean, I haven't seen any of those live action Disney remakes, but again, the point of my last video on this topic was that they got me. They got me with the Cowboy Bebop live action remake, which wasn't good. I mean, sure, I didn't watch it just to go and watch it. Like I said in my last video, I went in with a very specific purpose. I wanted to dissect what I liked and disliked about it so that I couldn't be classified as just another contrarian, someone who thinks all remakes are bad simply by virtue of the fact that it's a remake. And yeah, I accomplished that. I can go on and on about the misrepresentation of the main character, Spike, because in the anime, Spike is an honorable thief who's just doing what he has to do to get by while still maintaining some semblance of a moral code. While in the live action remake, Spike is just a quick-witted, manipulative bounty hunter who only acts in his own self-interest. But it's fine because he's funny and looks cool and can do kung fu. I can go on and on about the copying and pasting of the Marvel playbook by making everybody capable of witty banter and how that destroys certain character dynamics, and also how the Marvelification of these characters doesn't only destroy the dynamics between characters, but also destroys the characters themselves, especially when part of the allure of your main villain is that he doesn't talk much, and so you never really know what's going on in his head. And so changing the villain from this quiet, ominous, and ruthless operator into this loud, expressive, and witty frat boy effectively kills the very essence of what made this character so intriguing in the first place. But again, going back to the solution, studio doesn't care about any of that. All they care about is that I watched this show from beginning to end. And I am just lucky that more people weren't like me and decided to stop watching it, which removed any justification for them to make a season 2. So I say all of that just to say that, sure, I can identify a potential solution to this problem of Hollywood remaking and rebooting anything and everything that they can get their hands on from our childhood. But at the same time, I also have to confess my inability to do what it takes to be a part of that solution. I can't stand up on the hill and look down and be like, we all need to do this. No, I have to acknowledge that I also contribute to this problem. But as I acknowledge that I'm part of the problem, that also comes with the realization and the responsibility to do my best to no longer be a part of the problem. And so I'll keep doing my best and I'll keep working towards that solution. But as of right now, I can't walk the walk entirely. I think it's fair to say that I'm crawling the crawl, not walking the walk just yet. But anyway, I think that's going to be it for this one. If you made it this far, thank you so much for indulging me. And a specific thank you to my sister for giving me another video idea. Much appreciated. But yeah, with all that said, I wish you all the very best going forward. Take care of yourself, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.